Hey y'all, today we're going to do Shimano Stradic 4000 FG. I'm just going to show you how to break it down, most of it, and service it and put it back together. So let's just get started. I'm going to start by unscrewing the knob for the drag or for the spool. And just pull that off. Next we'll unscrew the handle, and this one has a knob on the other side that you need to unscrew to remove the handle. Like so. There's a little square spacer on there. There's also a little lock washer on the bottom there. Clean that off in a sec. We're going to start with the rotor. So to access the rotor, we need to remove that click gear and those washers on there, and undo these two screws here. Now you can pull off this cap. See if it comes up. Good. And now we can unscrew that nut. I think this is left or counterclockwise to remove. Yep, it is. And that's it for that. Now you can just pull it off. Nothing under there. Alright, so we're just going to clean this up a little bit. Well, I'm going to clean it up quite a bit. I'm going to speed to the cleanup process, and then I'll come back to you and just show you what I'm going to do to this. Like I said, everything in this bale worked fine, so we're just going to add some oil to the points as well as the line roller, and then move on to the next step. So I'm going to oil here, there, side there, and inside there. We'll do the line roller in a sec. We're just going to work that back and forth. Just kind of helps the oil kind of get inside there and start working. Next, we're going to add some oil to this bearing, to this line roller. It has a bearing inside there. This was working fine when I tested it, so we're not going to break it apart. Just going to put some oil in there. Kind of work that at angles, so the oil can kind of work inside there, towards the bearing. Then we'll be done for the rotor and the bale. All right, let's jump to the housing. And to start, you're going to take off these two screws here. These screws are the same size. Remove that cap. And these screws are not the same size. So when you take them out, just make sure you know where they came from. I think all three of these are different sizes. So lay it out so you lay it out so you can see it. One is there. Got a washer under there. Short one there. And on that side, this is almost the same length as this, but you can tell it's clearly shorter. So that's going to go up here, down here, and that one goes there. Now we can remove the lever for the anti-reverse by undoing this screw right here. Like so. Just gonna pop that down, and now we can pull this up like that. that comes out. That's just the cover. And let's pull this out. This looks pretty rusty. It spins, but I don't like how it looks. Only got one washer in there. Let's stick that back on so I don't lose it. And I'm gonna oil this right now and see if see how it sounds. Seems like it might be alright, so we're gonna just oil it and see. It's getting worse, which usually happens. Alright, so we're gonna replace this bearing there. Alright, so on to the next step. Let's undo the anti-reverse, and we're going to do that by undoing these 3 screws here. Up like so. And that looked pretty good when I took it out. So we're just going to clean that in a sec. We can pull that pinion out and then pull this bearing off. Might have to go off camera for this, but let's try it here. And see how this bearing feels. This one's probably bad as well. Yeah, we're going to replace both of these. Okay, so the next step is, first of all, I'm not going to remove the shaft for the lever for the anti-reverse, but we are going to play with the worm gear, or the worm and the shaft and the block. So we're going to open that bottom plate up, so we can remove these 2 posts. Like so. And now we can just push this down and flip that over. I'll just come out like that. Now, I don't want to remove this worm, because I can just access it like this and clean it. So that's what we're going to do. If you did want to remove the worm, you could, but there's really no need in this case. Alright, so I'm going to speed this part up as well. It's just me cleaning stuff. Before I do, let me show you a couple of things that you need to take note of. There's a washer here that goes under that pinion bearing, like so. And that bushing there has 2 tabs on the end of it. Those tabs have to fit to the corresponding notches in the housing whenever you put this back in, and I'll show you that when I come back. Alright, I'll see you on the other side. check the last bearing that's in here, and then I'm going to pause the video and go and grab some the replacement bearings for at least those two over there. I'm looking for my bearing puller. There's a bearing inside here that sits at the bottom of the pinion. So let's see how this one looks. That one definitely feels fine. Alright, so I'm going to pause the video, grab replacement bearings for these two, and then I'll come right back to you guys. Okay, so we got our bearings and we're just going to oil these things. Just going to work it in. That should be good enough. And I forgot to clean these things off, so let's do that. And if you notice, when I pulled that reel out, or when I pulled that main gear out, it was pretty dry. So this reel clearly hasn't been serviced in a while, if ever. If you did want to break down the block on this, I just cleaned it out. You can, to remove the pawl, you can undo that screw right there for the cap. If you want to remove it from the shaft, you can also undo that screw. We're obviously not going to do that today. I'm at a decent amount of grease all around the block, but not a whole bunch on the pawl. Inside those holes as well. Now I'm going to get to the pawl and add just a touch of grease right there. We're going to do the same for all these parts of it. If you notice, when I was cleaning this reel, I kept holding my hand here and here. That's because I don't want those bushings popping out on me and dislodging the gears here. So let's do inside here where that bushing is going to sit for that main gear. Also here where that bearing is going to sit. Up here where the pinion bearing will be. And we're going to add a little bit onto the worm and just a little bit onto this plastic transfer. That should all be good. I don't do any really on the rods, just kind of use my fingers to get some residual grease on there. Same will be for this side where that bearing is going to sit. Now we'll grease these gears up. We don't need to use a lot of grease, but I'm probably going to use a little bit more than I normally would on these Stradics, because this is an old gear and really hasn't seen service. I'm also going to do the back side. And I'm going to add a little bit to where that the shaft for the handle is going to sit or go through. We're also going to add something to handle when we're done with that as well, but never hurts to add some more on there. Next will be the pinion. I like to grease the entire pinion with a light coat just for some essential corrosion protection. And that's probably about it. Alright, so let's stick the bushing in first. I'm just going to drop that in. Again, don't forget those tabs need to sit in the corresponding slots when you put it in there. and make sure it's recessed the entire way, or goes in the entire way. Now we can stick our shaft in. Notice I didn't grease that shaft. I don't really want to. It's better if you leave it dry. Now I'm gonna take our pinion gear, our bearing, drop that on and get that set down. And you want to do this like this because it's difficult to get the pinion gear when that bearing's on there. Get that bearing past that gear right there. Make sure it sits in place, and right about there is fine. Now I'm going to add my rods. The holes the rods are going to go in are right there on the bottom. And there's a hole at the top that sits in. Make sure it goes all the way up in there. One thing to note is there's a little notched end. That notched end is what's going in first. I hope I wasn't off camera for these things. If I was, I apologize. And they're nice and recessed in there. Now we can take our plate, stick that back on. It's going to sit just like this. Like so. I'm going to add a little bit of grease to it before I put it on. And then just cover it up. Make sure you have the right screws when you're doing this. And snug is fine. Alright, so before I forget, which is kind of what I will forget if I forget something, is that washer that goes under the bearing for the pinion gear. Now we can stick our pinion gear in there and be almost done with this stuff. Sticking the bearing on. And straight down it goes. As you put that pinion gear in, you want to keep turning it so you don't cause an abrasion to that transfer gear there, because that is plastic. So if you push down without turning, you might fray it or something. So just kind of turn as you go down, just like this. All right, that's all good. We can actually stick the anti-reverse back on right now. So let me go ahead and clean that by just wiping a Q-tip around it. You might get a little bit of black stuff on there. That's pretty typical. But this this clutch is well functional. I do like to wipe it until I see very little, if any, the black residue coming off of it. So I'm going to continue going. And that looks pretty good. Now we can wipe this off. And for the clutch, you'll notice there's two tabs on the bottom. Those tabs will fit in those holes across there, and there's a notch in that plate right there. That notch is going to fit over that cam, so it looks just like something like that, like so. Now we can screw these in and add our inner race. One thing I did not take off on this was the that little rubber seal there. You can certainly pull it off. That kind of acts as a brake for the bail trip. I didn't take it off because it's pretty easy to get these damaged, especially when they're so old. So I just kind of left it alone because it looked fine. Alright, where were we? I did get lost, sorry. Alright, we're going to stick our gear back in, our main gear. And now we're going to put our washer back on and stick our final bearing on there. Now I might pause the camera after I do this because I'm going to try to test out the feel of the reel, just to make sure it's fine. Yeah, I'm going to pause the camera, just double check to make sure we don't need to add any shims or play with the shims on this. Then I'll come right back to you guys. Okay, so the shimming felt fine. What I did not show you on camera was that I put the inner race in. All I did was just, it's keyed, so I just put it down to where it slides over the pinion gear and twist it as I pushed it down through into those cylinders. I did not clean this off. Okay, so this plate will go on after you put the main gear in. Where this plate sits is there's a tab on this end, there's a hole on this end. That tab is going to fit inside that hole just like that, and then you can put this cover on. You didn't need it to do the testing of the reel, but for aesthetics, you do need it. Alright, so now we can stick our screws in. These washers are there, I don't know why. Remember, this is the shorter of the two longer screws. Whew, that sounds funky. Then here's a longer screw that goes on the bottom. You may or may not have those washers there when you take your reel apart. It's not that big of a deal if you do or don't. Then the final screw will be right over here, and that's the shortest of them all. Give me 1 second. I wouldn't recommend doing that, so that's why I'm not even talking about it. Kind of gotta be a little careful doing it that way. Okay, so let's stick this on. There's not much you can do for this stuff here. I'm just gonna add a layer of corrosion X inside here. Just kind of try to help to protect it. You can also add grease. It's kind of like the corrosion X because it just kind of gets everywhere, which is good. But I do use grease also. You can just kind of wipe that around. Alright, now let's stick this cap on. It's going to sit like that. And both of these screws are the same size, so there's no need to worry about which one goes where. And now we can put our lever on. This lever is keyed, so there's like a little squared end. It needs to fit. Just kind of rotate that lever until you find the spot where it sits, and then just push it up. Just like so. I'm going to add some grease to this since it's going into a metal or aluminum thing. We don't want that getting locked up in there, because if that happens, then you have no way of opening this reel up, because that does have to be removed. Obviously you can break it, but with these older reels, parts are hard to come by, so that may not be an option. Get it to snug, and that feels pretty good. And just test it out, make sure it works fine. The transference of sound in these videos may not be an accurate description of what I'm doing, so again, I don't recommend doing whatever I'm doing there. Alright, so next step is to put the rotor on. Then we'll work on the handle and the drags or the spool. I keep thinking I'm getting another frame. Alright, so we're going to put this nut back on. I'll show you kind of where you want to have the points, so you can get that cap over it. You want to have those points, or one of those points, somewhere around there, like just past the holes like that, and it should go over fine. If not, then we'll just do it until it does, but we're good with that. Now you don't need to over tighten these. That feels really good. Alright, so let's do the handle. Let's stick that in, and then we'll get to the spool. Just clean off all this rust that I see, or as much of it as I can, and then we're going to add some grease to it. Alright, so let's add some grease to this. Gonna add some grease here. On that shaft. And then for the knob, all we're gonna do is oil this thing. We're gonna oil here. You can oil there as well if you want. The best oil is to be right there on the shaft going through there, Just kind of spin it, kind of work that in there, and you can go at all different angles. Alright, so let's take this in, and then we'll clean off any residual grease that's there. I did add grease there already, so we don't need to worry about that part. This is a squared shaft, so you just got to fit it into the holes. Same for this washer on there. It's squared, so as soon as you find the hole, just screw it in, or push it in and then screw. And you do want this pretty snug. Now we can clean off any grease that was sticking out. Alright, so let's get to the spool. Well, let's put this on first. Then we'll get to the spool and be done with this. The click gear goes first. Then these washers. Like so. And now we can play with this stuff. I'm going to clean off this a little bit and then just add some grease to it. That's the line keeper there, and this is the click tongue. And now to open the drags up, we're going to pop this retaining spring out. Make sure you keep your fingers over it so it doesn't shoot out on you. Then we're going to pull the stack out. This guy had a total of 6 reels, and I gotta say, a lot of the reels, well, pretty much all the reels had a lot of issues inside, but every single one of these drags, the drag stacks, were okay. So I'm guessing he'd like to keep the drags good, but possibly not service the reels. I don't know. I thought this one would be bad just based on the top part. We may need to replace one of the drag washers there or something, but we'll see. And all I'm going to do now is just take out that fuzz that comes off these drag washers. And for these drag washers, you can, let me show you the stack on this, sorry. It's going to lay like this. I guess I'll just clean them all off first and then show you. Alright, so you're going to have one drag washer, goes on the bottom. And you can actually add drag grease to that if you wanted to. I just use a heavier kind of oil. 3 to 5 drops should be fine. Then you have a keyed washer. Whenever you see a little fuzz on the end, you want to get that off. Next goes the next fiber drag washer. A couple more drops of oil. Then you have the eared washer. And this final drag washer. When we're done with this, we're going to test this out to see, well, I'm going to test it out to see if the drag is sticking at all, because when I first tested the reel, this drag was sticking, and if that's the case, I'm just replace them. Final keyed washer goes on top, and this this retaining spring goes in. And the way I put it in is I angle this one end into the slot or ridge that it goes into, Then I just kind of work my finger around to get the rest of it in. After I do that, I want to make sure that this is set into the correct groove on this, and we are good now. Now we can stick this on, make sure that works, and I guess we'll just test it out with you here. Yeah, see, I don't like that noise right there. Before I remove it, because it feels okay, I'm gonna probably take it outside and test it to see how the drag comes off. All right, so that's how you take apart and put together and service Shimano 4000 FG. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all next time.